Everyone in the small riverside town of Grayford believed Daniel Harris was dead. They had believed it for 15 long years. Daniel had been only 27 when he disappeared, young, ambitious, and restless. He worked at the old shipping yard by the river, saving money to leave town with his wife, Emma, and their newborn son, Lucas. But one stormy night, Daniel never came home. His boat was found shattered near the rocks, and his jacket floated in the water days later. There was no body. Still, after months of searching, the town accepted the truth it preferred to understand. Daniel Harris was gone. Emma cried for years. She waited longer than anyone thought reasonable. Every time footsteps passed their small house at night, she hoped. Every knock on the door made her heart stop. But hope slowly turned into grief, and grief into survival. She raised Lucas alone. Life was not kind, but it was steady. Emma worked as a school librarian, and Lucas grew into a quiet, thoughtful young man with his father's eyes he had never seen in a mirror beside his own. Daniel became a memory, a photograph on a shelf, a name spoken softly, until one autumn evening when the man who came back stood at the edge of town. Daniel woke up in a hospital 15 years earlier with no memory of who he was. Doctors told him he had been found unconscious near the riverbank, miles away from Grayford. A head injury had erased his past. He remembered no name, no family, no life, only flashes, water, darkness, pain. With no identification and no one searching for him, Daniel became John to the hospital staff. When he recovered enough to walk, he left with borrowed clothes and an empty future. He worked odd jobs. He learned how to live again. Over time, he built a quiet life in another town under another name. But something was always missing, a hollow feeling he could never explain. Then, one day, memories began to return. A woman's laugh, a baby's cry, a river at sunset. The memories came slowly, painfully, like pieces of glass, and with them came guilt, fear, and a question that haunted him every night. Who did I leave behind? When he finally remembered his name, Daniel Harris, it felt like waking up from a long, cruel dream. That was when he decided to go back. Grayford looked smaller than he remembered. The streets were quieter, the houses older. The shipping yard was almost abandoned. Daniel walked through town like a ghost, afraid of what he might find and what he might destroy. He stood outside his old house for a long time. Someone else lived there now. So he went to the place he knew Emma would be, the school library. It was nearly closing time when he stepped inside. The smell of books hit him first, and then he saw her. Emma. Her hair was streaked with gray now. Her face held lines of years he had not lived. She looked tired, but strong. Daniel's heart pounded. His legs felt weak. She looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Emma dropped the book in her hands. "No," she whispered. "This isn't real." Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came. Tears filled his eyes as he took a step forward. "Emma, it's me." She shook her head violently, backing away as if he were a dream that would vanish if she blinked. "You're dead," she said, her voice breaking. "I buried you." "I know. I'm so sorry." The room spun. Emma grabbed the edge of a table to steady herself. "You don't get to come back," she said, anger rising through her tears. "You don't get to disappear for 15 years and just walk in." "I didn't leave. I was hurt. I lost my memory. I didn't know who I was." Emma laughed bitterly. "That sounds like a story." "It's the truth." She stared at him. searching his face. The scar near his eyebrow, the way he held his hands, the voice she had not heard since she was young. Her knees buckled. Daniel caught her before she fell. And in that moment, she knew. Lucas met his father a week later. He had imagined this moment his entire life, what he would say if his father ever came back, but when Daniel stood in front of him, older and broken, Lucas felt only confusion. "You're too late," Lucas said coldly. Daniel nodded. "I know. I grew up without you. I know. My mother cried herself to sleep for years." "I know," Daniel said again, tears streaming down his face, "and I would give anything to change that." Lucas clenched his fists. "Then why did you come back?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Because you deserve the truth, and because I couldn't live the rest of my life pretending you didn't exist." Silence filled the room. Lucas turned away. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he said. "I don't expect you to," Daniel replied softly. "I just hope, one day, you might let me try to be your father." Lucas didn't answer, but he didn't leave either. The town struggled to accept Daniel's return. Some people welcomed him, others whispered. Some called him a liar, some called him a miracle. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply stayed. He got a job repairing boats. He helped Emma around the house. He showed up for everything. Slowly, painfully, trust began to grow. Lucas started asking questions about the past, about the river, about the man Daniel used to be. Daniel answered them all. Years later, on a quiet evening by the river, Lucas finally spoke the words Daniel had waited to hear. "Dad." Daniel closed his eyes, letting the sound settle into his soul. Some men never come back. Some come back too late. But Daniel Harris came back when it mattered most. Not to reclaim his old life, but to build a new one from the truth. And this time, he stayed. Daniel Harris stayed in Grayford, but staying was harder than coming back. Every morning, he woke up with the same fear, that the life he was trying to rebuild might still slip through his fingers. He lived in a small rented room near the river, close enough to hear the water at night. Sometimes the sound comforted him. Sometimes it reminded him of everything he had lost. Emma tried to be polite, careful, distant. She allowed Daniel into her life, but only halfway. He could help around the house, fix broken shelves, drive her to work when her car failed. But he did not sleep under the same roof. He did not touch her hand. The past stood between them like an invisible wall. Some nights, Emma sat alone after Lucas went to bed, staring at old photographs. Daniel, young and smiling. Her heart still loved him, but her mind remembered the years of loneliness. And love, she had learned, was not always enough. Lucas avoided his father, not out of hatred, but fear. Daniel represented questions Lucas had buried for years. If his father was alive, then what had all that pain been for? The birthdays missed, the school events with empty chairs, the nights his mother cried quietly in the kitchen. One evening, Daniel found Lucas sitting by the river, skipping stones. "Your throw is just like mine," Daniel said gently. Lucas didn't look at him. "I wouldn't know." Daniel sat a few feet away. "I used to come here when I couldn't think straight." "Why are you really here?" Lucas asked suddenly. "Is it guilt?" Daniel thought carefully. "At first, yes, but now it's hope." Lucas scoffed. "Hope for what?" "That maybe I can still be part of your life," Daniel said, "even if it's small." Lucas stood up. "You don't get to choose that." "I know. You do." Lucas walked away, but this time he didn't tell Daniel to leave. The town was not as forgiving. Whispers followed Daniel wherever he went. Maybe he ran away. Maybe he's lying. People don't just disappear for 15 years. One afternoon, Daniel was confronted at the boatyard by Mark Collins, Emma's former fiancé, the man she had almost married 5 years earlier, before fear of losing again stopped her. "So the ghost is real," Mark said bitterly. Daniel didn't rise to the insult. "I never meant to hurt anyone." Mark laughed. "Funny, because that's all you've done." Emma arrived just in time to hear the last words. "That's enough," she said firmly. Mark turned to her. "You're really going to believe him?" Emma met his eyes. "I believe what I see." Mark walked away, anger burning in his steps. Emma stood silently beside Daniel. "Thank you," he said. She nodded. "Don't make me regret it." That night, Daniel collapsed. Emma found him unconscious on the floor of his room, the old head injury finally catching up with him. At the hospital, doctors spoke of stress, trauma, and damage that had never fully healed. "He's been pushing himself too hard," the doctor said, emotionally and physically. Emma sat beside Daniel's bed for hours. She watched him sleep, remembering another hospital room years ago, after Lucas was born, when Daniel had held their son with shaking hands. "I waited for you," she whispered. "Longer than I should have." Daniel stirred. "Emma?" he murmured weakly. She froze. "I'm here." Tears slipped down his face. "I was afraid you'd stop believing." She reached for his hand. "I never stopped," she said softly. "I just stopped hoping." Lucas visited the hospital the next day. He stood awkwardly at the door, unsure whether to go in. Daniel opened his eyes and smiled faintly. "Hey." Lucas swallowed. "Mom said you were sick." Daniel nodded. "Looks like my body finally caught up with my mistakes." Lucas hesitated, then stepped closer. "You almost left again." Daniel's smile faded. "I'm sorry." Lucas stared at him for a long moment. "If you disappear again, I don't think I can survive that." Daniel's voice broke. "Then I won't. I promise." Promises had failed Lucas before, but something in Daniel's eyes felt real. Lucas sat down. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. Weeks passed. Daniel recovered slowly. Emma allowed him to move back into the house, into the guest room. The air between them was fragile, cautious, but warmer. They talked more, about the years apart, about fear, about who they had become. One evening, Emma finally asked the question that had haunted her. "Would you have stayed if the accident never happened?" Daniel answered without hesitation, "Every single day." Emma looked away, tears shining. "I don't know how to trust that." "You don't have to," he said. "Just don't close the door." She didn't answer, but she didn't close it either. By spring, Grayford began to change its mind. People saw Daniel at the school events, at the grocery store with Lucas, fixing boats without complaint. He wasn't the man who disappeared anymore. He was the man who stayed. One evening, Lucas handed Daniel a worn baseball glove. "I found it in the attic," he said quietly. "It's yours." Daniel took it with trembling hands. "I thought it was gone." Lucas shrugged. "Some things come back." Daniel smiled, knowing those words were more than just about a glove. The man who came back didn't expect forgiveness. He didn't demand love. He only showed up, day after day, until absence was no longer his story. And for the first time in 15 years, Daniel Harris went to sleep without fear of disappearing again. Summer arrived quietly in Grayford. The river shimmered under the sun, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt like he belonged to the present, not the past, not a borrowed life, but now. Yet, peace did not come easily. One afternoon, a letter arrived for Daniel. It was from the hospital in the city where he had lived for years under another name. The envelope shook in his hands. Inside was a medical report. Clear, honest, terrifying. The old head injury had worsened. The doctor's words were simple but heavy. Memory loss could return, possibly permanently. Daniel folded the paper slowly. He had come back to rebuild his life, but what if his life slipped away again? That night, Daniel told Emma the truth. They sat at the kitchen table, the same place where she had once cried alone for years. "If it happens again," Daniel said quietly, "I might forget everything. You, Lucas, this life." Emma's chest tightened. "How long?" "They don't know. Months? Years? Maybe never." She stood up abruptly, pacing. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" "Because I was afraid," he admitted, "and because I didn't want Lucas to feel abandoned again." Emma stopped. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she said, "We don't get to choose how long we have, only how honest we are while we're here." Daniel looked up at her. "I'm scared, Emma." She walked back to the table and placed her hand over his. "So am I," she said, "but this time you're not alone." Lucas overheard the conversation. He didn't say anything that night. The next day, he skipped school and went to the river, the place where his anger always took him. Daniel found him there hours later. "You heard," Daniel said. Lucas nodded. "So what? You'll disappear again, but this time from the inside." Daniel winced. "That's one way to say it." Lucas threw a stone hard into the water. "I just got you back." "I know, and that hurts more than losing my memory." Lucas turned sharply. "Then fight it." "I am," Daniel said, "by being here, by making memories that matter, even if I can't keep them forever." Lucas's voice cracked. "That's not fair." Daniel nodded. "No, but life never asked permission." Silence hung between them. Then Lucas said something unexpected. "Teach me," he said. "Teach you what?" "Everything," Lucas replied. "So even if you forget, I won't." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "Okay." They spent the summer together. Daniel taught Lucas how to fix engines, how to fish, how to listen to the river and know when a storm was coming. He told him stories, not just the good ones, but the mistakes too. Emma watched them from a distance, her heart aching and healing at the same time. One evening, she finally allowed herself to lean into Daniel's shoulder. "I don't want to lose you again," she whispered. "You won't," Daniel said. "Not really." She looked at him. "What does that mean?" "It means love doesn't disappear just because memory does." She kissed him then, not with certainty, but with courage. The town gathered that fall for the annual river festival. Daniel stood on the old dock, holding Emma's hand, Lucas beside him. A man from the town council stepped forward. "Daniel Harris," he said, clearing his throat, "we were wrong about you." Murmurs spread. "You didn't run," the man continued. "You survived, and you came back." The crowd applauded, not loudly, not perfectly, but honestly. Daniel felt something loosen inside his chest. Acceptance didn't erase the past, but it made room for the future. One winter morning, Daniel woke up confused. Emma knew immediately. "Daniel?" she asked gently. He looked at her, uncertain. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Her heart broke, but she smiled. "I'm Emma," she said, "and you're safe." Lucas stood in the doorway, frozen. Daniel looked at him. "You must be my son." Lucas swallowed hard. "Yeah," he said, "I am." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then I'm glad I found my way back." Months later, Daniel remembered some things. Other things never returned. But the house was filled with notes, photos, recorded messages, love prepared in advance. One evening, Daniel sat by the river with Lucas. "You know, Daniel said thoughtfully. Even if I forget my life again, I think I'll still feel that this is home. Lucas smiled. That's enough, Dad. Some people come back to reclaim what they lost. Others come back to give what they still have. Daniel Harris came back not once, but every day he chose to stay present, even when memory failed him. Because being a father, a husband, a man, isn't about remembering everything. It's about loving, even when the future is uncertain. And that is how the man who came back truly stayed. Winter softened into spring once again. Daniel Harris sat on the porch, wrapped in a light blanket, watching the river move as it always had, steady, patient, forgiving. Some mornings he remembered everything. Other mornings he needed help remembering his own name. But one thing never changed: the feeling that he was loved. Emma had learned how to live in the present. She no longer mourned the future before it arrived. Every shared cup of tea, every quiet conversation, every smile from Daniel felt like a gift rather than a promise. Love, she realized, did not need certainty to exist. Lucas, now older and wiser than his years, became his father's memory. When Daniel forgot how to fix an engine, Lucas reminded him. When Daniel forgot a story, Lucas finished it. When Daniel forgot himself, Lucas never did. One evening, Daniel asked, "Why do you stay, even when I forget?" Lucas answered without hesitation, "Because you never stopped choosing us." Daniel smiled, tears filling his eyes. Then I must have done something right. On a quiet afternoon, Daniel asked Emma to walk with him to the river. They moved slowly, hand in hand, the same path Daniel once feared he would never see again. "I don't remember our wedding very clearly," Daniel said softly, "but I remember how you make me feel." Emma squeezed his hand. "That's enough." They stood by the water, sunlight dancing on the surface. "If one day I don't know who you are at all," Daniel said, "promise me you won't be angry." Emma looked at him, steady and strong. "I promise I'll love you anyway." He kissed her forehead, the way he always had. That night, Daniel slept peacefully, and he did not wake up. The town gathered by the river for his farewell. There were no whispers this time, no doubts, only stories. They spoke of the man who disappeared, yes, but more importantly, of the man who returned, the man who stayed, the man who taught them that presence matters more than perfection. Lucas stood beside Emma, holding her hand. "He didn't give us all his years," Lucas said quietly, "but he gave us all of his heart." Emma nodded, and that was enough. Months later, spring returned to Grayford. The river flowed on. Lucas repaired boats at the old yard, just like his father once had. Emma continued working at the library, a small framed photo of Daniel on her desk, not as a loss, but as a reminder. One evening, Lucas sat by the river and read from a notebook Daniel had written during his final months. "If you're reading this, it means I stayed. Even when memory failed, even when fear tried to take me away, I stayed. And if love remembers me, then I was never truly lost." Lucas closed the notebook and smiled through his tears.